Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our third episode of Habit Lab. This is a mini-series of midweek episodes that we are putting together. We've had 2 episodes up to now, and this is episode 3. We hope that you're doing good. We're going to start in a few moments' time, but we thought I would just hop up here and just give you a welcome. Maybe you get a coffee or a hot chocolate or whatever you like this time of evening. And we're going to talk about how to go deeper in our relationship with God. And so that's going to be tonight's topic, and we're going to dive straight into it in a few minutes. I know what we're going to share today. I've got my friends Ben and Joseph here tonight, and we're going to share some thoughts and some of our experiences, and be quite honest with you as well about maybe some of our mistakes in this whole area. But we're going to talk about how to go deeper in our relationship with God. So I know this is going to be a great episode. It's going to be good encouragement. So why not even share the link, maybe, or someone in your Connect group? You can share this with your Connect group. Share this with somebody in the life of church. We know this is going to be helpful to everybody, regardless of how long we've been Christians. And so we're going to be up for a great night. We've got just about a minute or so to go, 90 seconds to go. So we'll see you then. But yeah, we're going to have a great, fantastic night tonight. Good evening again, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Habit Lab. If you're watching live, I know this is going to be available on rewatch or replay on our YouTube channel as well. But if you're watching live, we would love to hear from you. As you can see, I've got my friend Joseph and Ben here tonight, and we're going to look into the whole topic, how to grow deeper in our relationship with God, how to go deeper in God. So I know that this is going to be helpful, encouraging, hopefully challenging as well. And I think at the end of this, hopefully we'll come out with maybe some application points on how we can go deeper in God. And we're going to talk about the whole area of fasting. And it's something which we don't talk an awful lot about on a Sunday, but we want to talk about it today. And we're going to look at what is fasting, because we know that lots of different cultures have different interpretations of fasting, but what is Christian fasting, or what's biblical fasting? And this whole season that we've been in from the beginning of the year, we've been in a series, Holy Habits, all about spiritual disciplines. And I know that many of you have been commenting in different ways in groups, and I've heard some comments, or seen some comments on social media just about how helpful this series has been, how practical it's been, and hopefully it's actually helped you to pray or get into God's word better, and it's helped you in your relationship with Jesus. And so we're going to look into another aspect, another spiritual discipline, which is fasting. But I just want to say before, Joseph's going to share some thoughts for us tonight, and then we're going to discuss it. We would love to just hear your thoughts and comments. We've got screens here so we can see the live chat. And so maybe just before I hand over to Joseph, why not just put maybe as a comment, or say hi if you haven't already commented in the chat, just so we can see your name pop up. Just say hi, or emoji, your favorite emoji, or a thumbs up. And maybe if you have any particular standout or something from the series that's been helpful to you, maybe just put in what's been most helpful. And then we can go through those comments and maybe read some of them out. Put some thoughts as well. If you have any thoughts about what we shared tonight, just throw out. We'd love you to just comment in the chat and get some conversation going. Hi, Colin, Leanne, Amy, Brenda, Carol. We can see your names pop up just to prove that we are actually live. We're not fake live. So just keep commenting, and we'd love to keep the conversation going through the chat as we go through the night. And we're going to be we'll wrap up here about 8 o'clock, so we're going to be quite distilled and hopefully have a good time together as well. So Joseph's going to share some thoughts. I'll hand it over to him.
Right. Thanks, Johnny. Yeah, just making sure the mic is working there. Right, thanks, Johnny. So I've been tasked to just talk a bit about the theology of fasting, and I'm hoping that I'll just be able to take a few minutes to just talk about a few thoughts around fasting. I want to quickly read from Matthew chapter 6, and from verse 16 to 18, where Jesus was saying, whenever you fast, don't be gloomy like the hypocrites, for they make their faces unattractive, so their fasting is obvious to people. Truly, I tell you, they have their reward. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that your fasting isn't obvious to others, but your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And there are a lot of things we can talk about fasting, but I'm just hoping to just quickly highlight a few things. As Johnny highlighted, this has been a really great series for us where we've looked at a lot of things, and we've tried to make the distinction between the things we practice and what you generally find within the secular world. So we talked about teaching, for instance, reading the God's word, for instance. We talked about worship. We talked about biblical meditation. So all of these topics over this week, we've looked at it from a Christian perspective. And the same is going to be for today as well, because as soon as we hear the word fasting, a few things come to mind. We think about the fasting that has to do with diet, or the intermittent fasting, and all the popular use of the word around. But we're going to be looking at biblical fasting, and I just want to bring 3 thoughts around fasting. I just put this in 3 questions. So we're going to look at what is fasting, why do we fast, and how do we fast. What is fasting? Why do we fast? And how do we fast? So what is fasting? Originally, fasting was just pretty much self-denial of food. So when you self-deny yourself, especially food, you've pretty much fasted. Now, you probably will agree with me that fasting is a lot more than that. Now, if fasting is just the self-denial of food, then I think we all fast when we go to bed and then wake up in the morning after a long fast. But fasting is a lot more than that. So I try to look at what I can define as fasting. So I put in this thought together. So fasting is temporarily removing something habitual or something dear to us so we can focus on God or experience God. So fasting is temporarily removing something habitual or dear to us so we can focus on God or experience God. That basically is what I would define as fasting. Now, why do we fast? Now, there are lots of reasons why we could fast, and I think one of the conversations we'll be having this evening will be around some of the reasons why we fast. But we can fast basically to draw ourselves close to God, to humble ourselves, to refocus our attention on God. Fasting is part of worship as well. And then we can also fast to grow our relationship with God. And as I said, there are many reasons why we can fast. And then I think one of the things we'll be talking about this evening is why we do fast as Christians. Then the third question I just want to quickly answer is how we should fast. Matthew chapter 6, which the passage we just read, Jesus extensively talked about how we should fast as Christians. But I just want to quickly mention a few things. If you read Matthew chapter 13, the Bible talks about how the Holy Spirit separated Paul and Barnabas for their ministry. So the first thing we should think about when we are talking about how to fast is, first of all, find a reason. There should be a reason why you want to fast. You just don't deny yourself food. There should be a reason why you should fast. Make it personal. It's not something you tell everyone around the world that I'm fasting. As we read in the book of Matthew, Jesus pretty much said, as much as you can, make it personal, make it secret. Now, this is different from corporate fast, where we call upon people to fast as a church. Most importantly as well, to remember to focus on Christ, okay? That's another reason another way we should fast. So when you fast, remember we defined fasting as removing something habitual, something dear to us, and then refocusing that on Christ. So what are some of the things we can remove? Remember I said fasting just goes beyond denial of food. So it could be Netflix, it could be your phone, it could be social media, it could be sweets, it could be chocolate. There are loads of things you can fast. But you have to take yourself away from something that generally is habitual. So if I'm a kind of person that generally doesn't eat for pretty much most of my day, then if I don't eat for most of my day, I can't count that as a fast. So a fast generally will be something that is dear to you, something that you take away from yourself for a particular day, and then you refocus. That's very, very important. And I think this is quite central to all we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. We take our attention from something, and I think Johnny talked about this when we looked at habits as well. So we take our attention from something and we focus on something. And finally, how do we fast? You just do it. It's up to you. You just do it. So those are my thoughts, and we'll see if Johnny and Ben agree or disagree in a couple of minutes. But yeah, I hope that you find that helpful. What fasting is, why we fast, and how we fast. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. And just before I go to Ben, hear some of his thoughts on fasting and what Joseph just shared there. Maybe in the chat you might want to just put in if you've tried fasting before. Maybe just share your experience. Maybe you're experienced in fasting, or maybe you haven't tried it, but maybe it's just put in your current experience of fasting, and maybe some comments there, and just love to hear some of your thoughts and where people are with fasting and whether you've tried fasting before and how that went. Ben, any first thoughts on that?
I think it really is that thing of replacing something with God. That's the key, isn't it? That we don't just stop doing something for the sake of it. I've done that a few times, and you get, without God, there is no purpose in it. There's no point in it. I've done fasts before that. I've got to 12 o'clock because I haven't replaced what it is I'm getting rid of with God, and I've just got tired, hungry, and grumpy, so I've given up. Whereas when we replace what it is we're giving up with time with God, the whole purpose and the whole fast actually makes a difference. Without God, it's just not doing something that you'd normally do.
Yeah. Should we talk a moment about maybe some of our fails when it comes to fasting? Like if you've tried to fast before, but it kind of didn't work. Like it didn't really. You weren't focused on the right thing.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe talk about some failures.
Yeah, it depends on what time of the day. So sometimes I can go long periods without food. And so when I fast sometimes, I don't know, probably you have experienced that, where you go through the whole day and then you realize in the evening that I haven't eaten all day and I was fasting. I mean, no kidding. There's probably, I've not opened my Bible through the day. I've not even said a word of prayer through the day. I've pretty much starved myself all day. And then in the evening, I just realized I haven't eaten all day. And I call that a fast, which it's not really a fast, especially when you talk about what Ben has defined as a fast. And I think that is really key to what we talked about fasting. The fact that you take away something, and you just don't stop at taking away something. You replace it with God, not with something else, but with God, with an experience on God. But yeah, I have gone through the day without eating, and then just in the evening just realized that I said I was fasting that day.
Yeah, it's, I think quite often, kind of just like you say, like we can focus so much on what we're giving up, and we actually aren't focusing on what we actually meant to be taking hold of.
Yeah.
And I've done fasts like that, like even fairly recently, where I set some time aside. I'm going to say I'm not going to eat for one day or something like that. And the whole point of it is it's meant to have a purpose to it. And the whole point of it is we're trying to actually give a bit more concentration and focus on God, whether it be reading the Bible a bit more, spending time praying a bit more, seeking God in private a bit more. Not necessarily the whole day, but we're going to try to at least be a bit more intentional. So the times that would normally eat, for example, like it could be at work, in the office, you normally have a lunch or something like that. Take those few minutes that you normally use to gobble down a tuna sandwich, and actually just pray.
Yeah,
or,
true.
And I think God honors the motivation there. But I don't think what he really rewards is just sacrifice for sacrifice sake, because that's the whole, that's just pointless, isn't it? It just otherwise it's just a diet. And I guess we can get on maybe in a few moments about some alternative fasts as well, because when you talk about fasting, you have people in situations where you might have a medical condition where you've got to talk to a GP. You have all sorts of complications, you know, where you've got to, you know, keep your blood sugars high, or have a Mars bar or something like that. So, like, you know, there's in the 21st century, I think there are just as valid, powerful fasts like Netflix, which we'll get to. Soul, you can call it a soul fast. But the idea is we're letting go of something, removing something temporarily, as Joseph said, and we're actually using that time to seek God. And, you know, I want to let you in on something briefly. Like, we're talking about fasting today because in a few weeks' time, I think from Monday the 22nd, on social media and what have you, we're going to be having things coming up on our social media channels, and we're going to be asking people as a church, can we lay aside something, either for a day or for a whole week? If you want to be really spiritual, 7 whole days.
Not social media for a whole week though, because that will mean people will not get access to all the things we'll be saying in church.
We didn't think through that. Maybe we need to post. Maybe we need to like go back to paper and post it out to people. But to actually try to fast. And if you haven't fasted before, this is a great time to do it, because we're doing it as a church. And this is not legalistic. It's not like, you know, we're not going to be checking on people and check whether you're going to Greg's during the lunch. We're not going to follow you around during the week. But it's just an opportunity of let's actually press into God. Just like Holy Habits and, you know, Habit Labs, we've been encouraging people, let's seek God in private. Let's develop a stronger prayer habit. Let's develop our discipline and our devotion to the Word so that we come out stronger spiritually and prepare ourselves for whatever this year brings. And so from the 22nd of this month, we're asking anybody watching, if you're part of our City Life Church, to consider laying aside something, whether it be food or something else. And we'll get to that in a moment, what those other things can be. But let's develop this discipline, which I think is sometimes forgotten about and neglected. The seeking God in private and fasting and the principle that's in there, you know, to practice all the way throughout the Scripture. So Ben, any thoughts on any of that ramble that I just gave there, or what Joseph shared?
I think talking about failures before as well, but with what you're saying, I think it's important to think about what you're going to fast. Because again, I've had it where it's that time of year, it's Lent, it's whatever, we're going to give something up, and I'm like, I'll stop eating salt and vinegar crisps. Well, I don't eat salt and vinegar crisps anyway, so it's not like it's irrelevant for doing that. Do you know what I mean?
You're all about the prawn cocktail.
Yeah, exactly. Prawn cocktail. They're the worst, aren't they? We've got a cupboard full of prawn cocktail crisps because no one eats them. Anyway, but it's just, again, there is a level of sacrifice, as you said, that God honors, not just sacrifice for sacrifice's sake, but giving up something that actually, that's why I enjoy doing food, because I love food. So it is a genuine sacrifice to not eat for a few days, but it's replacing that with God, being mindful of what it is I am fasting, rather than just picking something easy.
Is there a time where you've fasted for a period of time and you've felt the benefit of it immediately? You've either had an answer to prayer, or you felt closer to God. Has there been kind of a positive experience, rather than, obviously we talked about failures?
I think there's always that sense of, and I'm trying hard not to just make it sound legalistic, but there's always that sense of feeling a kind of growth of some sort, where you feel you've actually gotten close to God for a particular period, and then as soon as you spend that time with God, you can actually feel that sense of, yes, I've spent time with God today. Either I've studied my Bible a lot more, or I've prayed to God about a particular thing a lot more, and then you find that that kind of fulfillment, I'll say. So it hasn't always been failure, but when you do pray, when you do take a good fast, well, a good fast, I don't think there's a bad fast. Yeah, there could be. But when you take a fast, then you can actually, just that feeling of being closer to God. There have been times when God has actually answered prayer for some particular things in life, personal stuff, when I've set out to fast for those things. Yeah,
same. couple of times when I've wanted an answer to prayer, or for me as well, I tend to do it when I get anxious,
Right.
and if I'm worried about money, is the main one for me, to be honest. It's just a thing for me to come to God and just remember that He's in control. So I give up some stuff, I press into Him, and by, be it a day, be it however long, I tend to find it brings me a peace. It brings me closer to God. So, yeah, there's been many times that it helps and works.
Yeah, but sometimes we also find, I don't know if that's the same for you as well, Ben, probably you, Johnny, as well. And this is something I'm trying to learn as well, where we come to a fast when we have an expectation. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but I think a good fast as well could be out of thanksgiving, out of just pretty much no pressure whatsoever. Life is good. I want to pick a fast, or just maybe out of routine as well, or maybe just for the heart of the nation. We're going through a difficult phase as a country. Maybe that's just one thing you want to fast and trust the Lord for. But yes, I think sometimes you find that fast tends to lean a lot more when things are not really going well, or when you're trusting God for a particular thing. But I think we also can look at fast from the good side of things as well, because you might tend to think it's only when things get rough, it's only when things get tough, or when I'm expecting something extraordinary in my life that I should pick a fast. Yeah.
I think again that's where making sure that we replace
Aha.
what it is we're fasting
Yeah.
with God, because any opportunity to spend good time with God is always going to be
Yeah.
rewarding, isn't it? If we're in a good place, or if we're after something.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of motive, isn't it, I guess? Because, if we're trying to twist, say we've got like a circumstance that we really want to change, and we're kind of complaining about it or whatever, and like we can just be fasting because we just want to get God's attention and try to manipulate things, like a hunger strike, and like you're going on a hunger strike to get God's attention.
Yeah, if you don't do
Kinda
this
thing.
for me, God, I'm not eating for the next.
Right. Right.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, and I know. Yeah, but and I think this is, again, we're probably going back to this whole thing as well of ensuring that. And I know we said we're going to talk about some specific things we can actually take away from our lives and replace. I think when you take away something and you're replacing it with the presence of God, with a relationship with God, then it's no longer about bending God's will to yours. It's more about submitting your will to God's will as well. So
Right.
yeah.
So motive's massive.
Yeah, I do agree. And it also ties to finding a reason as well, as far as motives are concerned.
And there seems to be like something about fasting, which is why it's in the Bible so much, that it kind of, although we don't do it to get God's attention, there's something about fasting that almost says to God that we're serious, that like we're giving up something. It's a sacrifice. There's a sacrifice involved, not just for the sake of sacrifice, but we're giving something, we're laying something aside, and it's kind of almost getting serious, isn't it? Even just within ourselves, like, I really trust you, and I really depend upon you, and to show
good
that
point.
and to demonstrate that I'm actually laying something aside, which is valuable. It's not just like what you were talking about, cheese and onion crisps. We don't, or
The
salt and
easy
vinegar
bit.
crisps, and you don't even like salt and vinegar crisps, but
I
you're kind of
do.
like making a fake sacrifice or whatever. But it's a real genuine. I trust you, and all this stuff that's going around right now, like, could be fear. If you're full of fear, we're going to get into maybe what can motivation for a fast.
Right.
I think we can fast just to seek God, just to get guidance, just because we just want to grow deeper, which is the theme of tonight. So I think we all have a reason tonight to fast. So when it comes to the 22nd of February, like whatever type of fasting you do, and we're going to get to some of the alternative fasting rather than food. But whatever fasting we do, like, we've all got a reason to fast if we're Christians.
Yeah.
Because we want to grow closer to God. We want to hear His voice. If you feel like you haven't heard from God, that, I guess that's a big can of worms. But if you feel like you haven't heard from God, or the Bible is dry at the moment, or just you feel like God's not speaking to you, a fast is one of the answers to that. Because it's just to kind of, I want to draw closer to God, And if you feel like you're full of anxiety, fear, and I think everybody's felt that because of what we've all been going through with the pandemic. If you feel like you're watching the news too much, what about fasting the BBC? What about fasting Sky News? What about fasting whatever
You're gonna keep
news?
listing them now.
Let's just list at ITV Channel 4, like, let's list them all. So I'm not nothing against the BBC so much, but like we can just get so much. We can just be filled so much with that stuff that we're being discipled by the culture, and we're being discipled by the 10 o'clock news, or by our news feed, or by our social media feed, and now our soul is full of fear or anxiety, and fasting can get that out of us if we lay that aside for a bit. I'm not talking about not watching the news at all and not being informed, but if we just detox from that and seek God, it's amazing actually how just that can just get some of that. It's almost like a detox, isn't it? It can get some of that out of our system. So I think we've all got maybe need some detox at the moment. Maybe. Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on like just the, I guess, BBC? And
I think again it is just putting God at the forefront of what we do. But
yeah.
He brings me peace. So like I said before, with money, when money's overtaken God in the forefront of my mind, that's when I need to do something about it. And fasting for me is a practical way of, as you're saying, just detoxing of resetting my brain to go, actually, he's in this. When instead of eating a sausage sarnie first thing in the morning, it's like, no, let's pray about this. Let's seek God, or do whatever it is I've decided to do. So yeah, I think it's important to just get God back at the forefront. That's for me what it is with fasting. Yeah, detoxing the noise and putting God back where he should be.
Yeah, great. I guess before we go into some ways that we can fast, some different types of fasting. Just want to maybe mention some of the comments. You got a lot of people saying, very good, Joseph. Nobody's saying anything about what I've just said.
They're fasting what you said, Johnny.
Phil, yes, a fast of gratitude for what God has given us. Amy, submitting your will to God's will. Joanne, very good, Joseph.
Thank you, John.
Leanne saying fasting will help us deepen our relationship with God because we will rely fully on him. Someone saying great, Ben. A few comments saying great, Ben, great, Ben, great, Ben.
Is that because I don't like salt and vinegar crisps?
Probably. Yeah, it's good to see these comments. It's probably a little bit. I'm trying to scan through them and make sure that I'm reading some of them. So fasting. So there's different options to fast.
Yeah.
Should we just lay out a few options?
Yeah, we could. You can take it theologically if you want, and then you can take it more on a practical side of things. I'm not sure which one you want to do now.
Are you wanting to take us?
No, you start first, Johnny.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got here some just different types of fasts. Just a short list. A complete fast, which actually is when you you don't drink even fluids. You don't drink any liquids, which is probably dangerous, actually, thinking about it. It's like this type of fast. Oh, no, it says you drink water only, all right? So you can, your Dr. Pepper and all that stuff can go, and you have to drink water, don't you? You can't just, do a complete fast, right? That's after 3 days of no water, I think you're going to be in trouble.
I think you can. I don't know. I'm not advising anyone to. I think that was what Esther did anyway.
I've got a complete fast here, which is like when you eliminate all food, all solids, and you only drink liquids, which is usually water. So that's one way. And I've done that for a few days.
Right.
Not a 40. I haven't never done a 40-day fast before. I don't know whether you guys have done that. Have you done a 40-day fast before?
No. Not the kind Moses, Elijah, and did no.
Yeah. And then you've got a selective fast, which this fast involves removing certain elements from your diet. One example of a selective fast is the Daniel fast, where you only eat fruit and vegetables, and you remove things like meat, cheese and onion crisps, sweets.
That's going to be hard.
Bread, and so you only have water and fruit and vegetables. That's a Daniel fast, and I've seen people do that before. That's that's obviously the character in Daniel did that. That's why it's called the Daniel fast. And then you have a partial fast, and this fast is sometimes called the Jewish fast. And it involves abstaining from any type of food in the morning and afternoon. And this can happen in specific times of the day, such as between 6 a.m. and 3 p.m. You can fast. You can actually just take a fast for certain periods of the day and have maybe one meal a day, that kind of thing, which is a partial fast. And then you've got a soul fast. And this is when a soul fast is when you choose something which you maybe spend a lot of time on. It could be the news, it could be social media, it could be Netflix, it could be like entertainment, TV. And this is where you kind of reduce that or completely remove that for a period of time, and then you turn to the scripture, you turn to God, and you kind of use some time to spend time with God. And that's some different types of fasts. Like, I guess there's other varieties. But any thoughts on just that?
I think pretty much every kind of fast might definitely find its way underneath all of this kind of fast. So one of the things that stood out for me there will be the soul fast, especially because of the kind of world that we live in now. There's a lot that can actually draw our attention away, and being able to find something where you can deny yourself for that particular opportunity. So Ben loves the Spotify, for instance, when he's going to walk. So when he's having a 40 minutes drive to wherever in the Northeast he goes to, he might decide that for that 40 minutes that I'm driving down, today I'm not going to listen to any music. I'm just going to deny myself for this moment, and all I want to do is talk to God. And I think that can be very, very important as well. So we deny ourselves. I think Ben said this as well earlier. You deny yourself of something that you don't really find easy to get rid of, because you always remember that you're supposed to do this particular thing. And when you remember, rather than doing that particular thing, the focus now goes back to God. But I should quickly add as well that there's also, we can also fall victim of the extreme. As much as fasting is a sacrifice, it's not torture, right? So you don't want to engage in a kind of fast where you can't move, you can't, well, I don't know, but...
You fast movement.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's also being careful not to get yourself... I mean, I wouldn't generally consider yourself fasting if you've gotten yourself in a kind of fast that you're so tired that you can't even open your mouth to say anything. You can't even pray. You can't even read your Bible. And you're waiting for 6 o'clock in the evening to just get that bottle of juice or that cup or that glass of whatever you want to have. So I think, yeah, it's about finding the balance. It's about denying yourself of something that habitually you would have gone for it, but at the same time not denying yourself so much so that it becomes some sort of extra level torture. So, yeah, that's what I would just quickly... That wasn't quick anyway, but that's just what I'll add to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I just think, again, it's going back to the purpose of it. So, again, if you sit and watch EastEnders every night, that's the sort of thing that instead of sitting and doing that...
Watching EastEnders,
Oh, wow.
eating cheese and onion crisps.
Yeah, exactly. You can turn that off and... yeah, it's the purpose behind it, isn't it? It doesn't have to be food. And in today's day and age, especially people who work in certain fields, not eating isn't particularly practical, is it? But to give up Instagram, if you're on it all the time, if you're an influencer, or if you every night sit and watch a certain thing or do a certain thing, to replace that with God for a time is always going to be beneficial.
Yeah. Because I'm gonna definitely do some food fasting for like a little bit during this week of 22nd, but I think I'm also gonna do a social media fast.
Right.
Because I mean, I saw some stats the other day, and it's like crazy. I mean, obviously this is like age specific,
Right.
but I think people under the age of 25 spend like something ridiculous, like 3 hours a day, up
Right.
to 3 hours a day on social media.
Wow.
It's crazy, absolutely. And you add that time up, and we say we haven't got any time. And it's like, and obviously the more you kind of, the older you get, maybe the less time you spend on it. But I reckon that during the like lockdown and all of that, I think our social media intake or our TV intake, our media intake's gone through the roof. And we wonder why we've got all sorts of things in our life that are like, anxiety and wrong emotions and all the stuff that can pull us away from God. We wonder because we're just consuming so much. So what about if we just, for a moment, just detox the soul a little bit? And I think all of us, if we're clinging on to our phone all the time. I noticed your wife, I don't know that this is directly aimed at you, Joseph,
What
but
did she
Denise
say?
is saying, turn off your phone and laptop and TV.
Well, that's Denise, man. She spends more time than I
I'm
do on those
assuming the
things.
tone was like, Joseph, turn off your phone, your
Right.
laptop and TV. So is she speaking directly to you?
I think she's talking to herself there. That's she's probably she's on her phone now, So but yeah, I think social media is good, and I think sometimes social media will probably be one of those big things. But you might find people that social media is not a big thing for them as well. But it's about identifying something, and I think we all have something, and it can be basic. So I love watching my football, for instance. So it could be a big Chelsea match coming up, all right? And then a good match is 1.5 hours, right? It could be that, okay, for this day, between when I would ideally sit down in front of, not the TV now, okay, all right, I would sit down and watch a game for 1.5 hours. Rather than sitting down and watch that game, I will be in my room and I'll spend time with God. Daniel fast, we talked about the Daniel fast a lot. One of the things we read in the Daniel fast as well is the Bible said Daniel even pretty much said he wasn't going to use choice lotions on his body and things like that. So maybe it might be a thing about sacrifice and makeup as well. I don't know what that will be like, but anyway.
That's a bit like, I know that Denise said something about you, but why are you saying you're directing that at Denise again? Like Denise, like.
But yeah, the point I'm trying to make though is we can go. There are things in our lives that we can actually just do away with for a period, just to refocus our attention on God. No matter how small, what might be small to Ben might not be small to me. It might be quite integral to my life. But it's just about putting that thing aside for just that particular period and just focusing on God.
So, so say we've chosen a certain fast, like,
Right.
Netflix, like whatever it might be, food. Okay, so when you spend extra time with God, any advice, any tips on like for people what to do in their time seeking God, what to do? Obviously, you got the Bible, but like any particular like focus, any tips or anything like that? Like, so what do you do when you're laying aside something, you're going to spend time with God? Any thoughts on just like how to prepare for that?
So for me, it depends, again, what day and what I'm doing. But if it's a work day and I'm doing food, I normally have a break about 10 o'clock and then lunch at about 1. On a building site, life gets a bit tricky, but I'll make sure that the first one, it's just purposefully praying about why I've given up food, be that praying for someone else for the situation, praying about my situation. We talked the other week about the still small voice. I tend to find it's just praying and then sitting with not a lot going on for 10-15 minutes. But then at lunchtime, it's about half an hour. Similar, I'll pray for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then nowadays it's so easy to read a couple of scriptures, be that on the phone, or physical Bible.
Yeah, one of those old-fashioned physical Bibles. Joseph's got an example of
That's
one of
the
those.
Word, isn't it? A book.
Yeah.
But I just try and, I think if you know how you connect with God, that's what you should be doing. So for me, I pray all the time, and I listen to music more than I do read. For me, I obviously do read, but for me, I get a closeness from God by worship and by praying. So they're the things that I focus on when I'm fasting. Whereas I know other people feel closer to God by reading a lot more as well as praying, so they'll do those things.
I think pretty much some of the things we've looked at in Habit Lab has been amazing. So I think when you think about the topics we've looked at, you can easily use that particular time to engage with it. So it's studying your Bible, it's praying, it's biblical meditation, it's worship. And those are pretty much the 4 topics we've looked at over the last couple of weeks through this series. And I think those things just pretty much fit really well into what you can ideally do. And I think the week we talked about praying as well. We talked about how mobile praying can be, because all of a sudden we've boxed prayer into something you do in your bedroom. But you can now see, based on the message Johnny preached that Sunday, you can now see that you can pretty much take prayer anywhere you go to. So when you're having a fast, wherever you are, prayer is one very good thing you can fill in with. Worship is another one, with the message Amy brought on worship as well. Again, that's something you can actually take with you wherever you go to. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is like, have a plan.
True. Yeah.
So don't just have like an empty void of nothingness where you're removing something and then you literally have no plan. You're like, oh, I'm going to spend some general time with God, and you kind of spending the whole time trying to figure out what you're going to read. Like, have a plan. So like, I'm studying Matthew at the moment, Gospel of Matthew. So like, I'll probably dig into some of those passages that I want to dig into and ask the Holy Spirit to speak to me in maybe fresh ways. I might spend more time in study.
Yeah.
Definitely going to have a prayer list of needs. People in family, friends, people in church community who are going through some stuff. I'm going to be praying through some specific needs. And so like, actually begin to just build up a list of maybe people you're going to pray for, things you believe in God for, and just maybe it's having something to study, a devotion plan to get into. So we're actually coming with like an intentional thought, an intentional plan, which really is the whole point of fasting in the first place. And I think my experience is when we do it that way, like when we actually seek God within the fast, God always honors that.
Yeah.
God always honors that in some way. And I think we come out of it. We don't always feel, just like, I'm not obviously an expert in this, obviously, but just like exercise. Why are you laughing? Just like exercise, like you don't always feel the immediate benefit straight away. Like, the results don't always show on your body, unfortunately, straight away. It takes some time to but after over some time, you feel, you know what? I can trace some answers to prayer back from that moment where I really pressed into God. I fasted, and you can start to almost see, with the benefit of hindsight, the benefit. I feel closer to God. Why is that? Oh, you know what? That was because, I fasted back then, and so you don't always see the results straight away.
True.
But God will always honor when we seek God. When we humble ourselves and we lay some time aside and seek Him, God will always honor that. There's some great questions.
Yeah.
I'll come to a question from Simon in a moment, and I'll kind of like let Ben and Joseph speak. It's an interesting question. Eleanor is saying, if you give up social media, how would you see online services? That's a good idea. Well, you can suspend the fast for Sundays. And if it's group night, Connect group night, you can still operate
suspend
on
that
Zoom.
one as well.
Yeah, don't fast church. Don't fast like Sunday church. That's definitely not the will of God, really, I don't think. Chris has just laid down just a sentence and then walked away. He just said, we've become addicted to technology, and then just left the chat. So that's all he said. We've become addicted to technology. Thanks for that observation, Chris. Denise is saying no comment about the makeup. All right, Amy said we've got to answer Simon's question. So Simon's asked this question. We're going to finish in the next few minutes. This is the last thing. I have a question for the panel. When the disciples could not cast out the evil spirit, and Jesus said they needed much prayer and fasting, so the disciples couldn't cast out a particular evil spirit in somebody. Jesus said you need to pray and fast in order to operate in that realm. What type of fast would that have been? It's an interesting question. Any thoughts on that?
I think the disciples gave up Instagram for that, just for that occasion.
In cheese and onion crisps.
Yeah, that is exactly what they fasted for. That specific demon was an Instagram demon, so they had to fast that and pray against that. So that's what that was. That's my theological.
Well, right. I wouldn't be sure what type of fast that would have been, but one thing we're sure of though was the disciples of Jesus didn't fast, not when Jesus was there. So if you remember, I can't remember.
Jesus didn't encourage fasting while he
Well,
was there.
when they were there, they probably didn't really pick up fasting, because one of the criticism the Pharisees brought against the disciples, and I think this was in Matthew chapter 9, and they said, why is it that your disciples don't fast like the disciples of John the Baptist
Right.
fasted? And then Jesus said something to them, and Jesus said, there's no need for them to fast now that the groom is around. When the groom leaves, they will fast. And you could see that happening through the book of Acts over and over. The Bible says, and the disciples were fasting. And there are examples where the disciples actually engage with spirits of another realm when we get to the book of Acts. So what type of fasting particularly that will be, I wouldn't be able to say, but we can deduce that it probably was a kind of food fasting of some sort, because as Ben said, the didn't have social media then, so they maybe didn't engage with the complexities of life that we have now. Most of the focus then would have been food. So I would probably deduce there was a food fast. Yeah, so that's probably the way I would answer that.
Yeah, it's interesting because that kind of question or that kind of passage where we read the Gospels and we read that type of thing, sometimes we don't know what to do with that,
Right.
particularly in the 21st century. We don't know what to do with when it comes to like a demon or evil spirits and things like that. But without getting into the whole demonology side of things tonight, because I think that's a different theme. Like, I think how to bring this into our life right now is quite relevant to what we're talking about, because there's some things in our life that aren't just like natural. There's not just natural remedies for the stuff. Like so. Sometimes life controlling behavior in our life, like you could say addiction, you could say just strongholds, like ways of thinking, which I think at its root, we've got an enemy, a spiritual enemy, the world, the flesh, and the devil. And sometimes to overcome some hindrances in our life, I think how this can apply is we can't just overcome this stuff with positive thinking.
Yeah.
And we can't even sometimes overcome stuff with a 21 devotional plan. How to, there's devotion plans that say, 21 days of freedom or that kind of stuff. Sometimes what we've got to do is we've got to press into God. We've got to fast.
Yeah.
We've got to go deeper in God in order to go to the root of, say, a life control and behavior. I think all of us have things like dependencies that we have, and those dependencies can become unhealthy dependencies that are sometimes rooted in evil, sin, and those strongholds that aren't always easy to overcome. And we all know that, bad habits are sometimes hard to break.
Yeah.
And so I think what Jesus is saying to all of us is, sometimes we've just got to, for some reason, God's put certain things in place, some disciplines in place, like fasting, that when we begin to really implement into our life, these spiritual disciplines, some things that are bondages or things that can hold us back, and actually we can overcome these things through things like seeking God in private, through prayer. So I think that's sometimes how we can apply that, rather than just thinking about an evil spirit, which obviously can be an issue, but it's also those things in our life that are we just need to break, but we can't break in our own strength. I think fasting,
just an extra push kind of a thing.
Fasting's that where we actually begin to go into the supernatural beyond our own ability.
Yeah.
So I think that's hopefully I haven't opened up a can of worms there. I think Simon is to blame for all of that. If there's any kind
and
of
Amy
worms,
as well. I mean, we'll probably have ignored Simon if Amy didn't put the pressure on us that we have to answer that.
I think it is just about getting that closeness with God for God's purposes, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that again, there's certain things I completely agree that we can't do on our own. And I think sometimes it's God reminding us, I'm in charge. I can do all things.
Yeah.
It's you bending to God's will and making sure He's in control of it. Because, casting out demons or whatever it was, God's got to be in control of that, hasn't it? It's not a... so I think that's it, isn't it? It's putting God back to where He should be. That's why I'm going to stop that can of worms before I go any further.
So we're gonna close. I actually just realized the time. It's like just past 8:15.
Oh, already.
And so this is kind of like, it's Simon's question, I think, that's really kind of like that's caused us to overrun. So that's all the fault, all the blame is to Simon. Thanks for that. that question, Simon. So this is the final episode of Habit Labs for now. We might, depending if there's popular demand, we might bring it back for season 2. But for the season 1, this is the last one. So hopefully, these Habit Labs have just complemented the Sunday messages and kind of helped to unpack and process some things. And tonight's topic, I think, is hopefully being helpful. Hopefully it's it's helped us process and think about what it looks like to actually fast and how to go deeper in God. And so let's just finish on the encouragement of let's just go deeper in God this season. And when it comes to the 22nd of February, let's get on board with this fast and let's apply it in the way that is most relevant to us. But let's seek God personally, and as a church, let's seek God corporately, and let's just believe for great testimonies to come out of this. We've all got friends and family who don't know Jesus. That's one thing that we can have at the top of our prayer list when we seek God and pray for those people by name. And so we're believing just for great testimonies in this difficult season that we're in. And we can't wait to be together in person, in the room together and all of that. And I know we've been saying that for weeks and weeks and months. But we can't wait for that. We're missing to see everybody's faces, But if you're not already in a group, it's a great opportunity to get into a group. Those are happening next week. And so we're going to finish, I guess, now. We've been on TV, if you want to call this a TV, long enough. And so hope this has been helpful. Let us know, I guess, in the comments as we are still live for a few minutes after this. We can read the comments. And so put in there what stood out. And let's grow deeper in our relationship with God over the next few weeks. Thanks, everybody, for watching.